And a very pleasant good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of JMU Sound Off. Fresh off a couple of weeks of break for our Sound Off team. We've got a great show ahead of us tonight. We're going to talk to JMU men's basketball coach Preston Spradlin about the team's 4-game winning streak as they continue to climb the standing in the Sun Belt. We have a big game this Wednesday against Troy, and we're going to get his thoughts about all of that, as well as where this team stands through 23 games. Lots of momentum in this group right now, so your attendance, your support at the Atlantic Union Bank Center has been tremendous, and we want to see that continue to grow as we move towards the remainder of this season, the final 3 home games at the AUBC. So a perfect time to talk about Coach Preston Spradlin. We're also going to talk about the JMU women's basketball team that continues to have success now, 19-4 on the season, 11-0 in the Sun Belt Conference. Great things on the women's side. And then we're going to do a news and notes section, talk about all that is happening with JMU football. 19 transfers signed recently by Coach Bob Chesney and co. We're going to go through that list and take a look at where the roster stands as we are rapidly approaching spring football, which will be here before we know it. So lots to cover tonight. As always, want to thank our sponsors, the Montpelier Collective. One note on the Collective, there's been a lot of change, a lot of transition over the last couple of weeks, but there's one thing that is still constant. We still have some bourbon left to sell. Our Champions Dry Bourbon, you can get that at championsdr.com. Over the coming weeks, there's going to be more information about the Champions Dry product, some fun social content as well to remind everyone out there that that is still a great way that you can support JMU athletics, support our JMU men's basketball team, JMU women's basketball team. It's just a great product and a great way to give back with something that tastes pretty good as well. Also, shout out to Where's Woody, Mike Norwood and the team there, Talent Core, Your Purple Nation, and Shoker Enterprises. As always, we are so grateful to our sponsors. And with that, we'll bring the other members of our Sound Off team, Taylor Atkins, Michael Evangelista. Steve Brown is on a much-deserved vacation as he heads down to Disney World. Guys, you think does Steve walk around Disney with the Mickey ears? Do we think he's definitely one of those guys? I definitely see him walking around with the little Mickey ice cream cone, though, for sure.
100%. I was going to say he is in full grandfather mode, Mickey ears, lollipops, turkey, smoked turkey leg, you name it.
I'm more of a goofy ears. I like the flop. So if I'm going to Disney, that's what I'm going. But well-deserved to Steve, as well as Alice and the grandkids. I know they will have a blast. Gonna go just so you guys some fast thoughts before we get to the man of the hour. Taylor, I'll start with you. You were at the Atlantic Union Bank Center for yesterday's game. 4th win in a row for JMU men's basketball, continuing their streak over ODU, which I know is a program that is close to your heart. Your fast thoughts.
I mean, growing up an Old Dominion fan, it's neat to have such a long streak against what has really been a storied mid-major program. And to not only have that streak, and really it started right around the time we get into the Sun Belt. So both football, men's basketball, women's basketball, 3 very premier sports. I grew up a fan, but I bleed purple, and it's good to have them in their place.
Awesome. And Michael, lots of football news around this program that continues to have success in the transfer portal as Bob Chesney and co continue to reorganize this roster. We're going to talk about that in great detail at the second half of the show, but your fast thoughts.
Yeah, I was going to say, 19 official signees. I think that's going to go up to 20 with some recent news going back to the well at Holy Cross. Plus, I think it's also preferred walk-on season as well. So you'll probably see some more commitments all over Twitter, etc. So really exciting time. I think all of us are probably excited to get to February. January felt like it was the longest month in history, to say the least. But I know April 12th, the spring game is going to be here before we know it. So it'll be exciting to see this team in current form. Plus, we've got a defensive coordinator hire. So a lot of question marks in the air.
All right, there you go. Well, Michael, we'll talk to you in a few minutes. And with that, we're going to bring on somebody who from day one, when he was hired here at James Madison University, has not only been a friend to this program, but has just led with access. Just like we've said all football season long, Coach Chesney and the staff really ushering in a new era of just availability, transparency as being available to fans, building bridges to show what makes this program special. And that is something that Preston Spradlin and his staff have done from day one. And Coach P, thanks for taking time out of your Sunday. I know you're fresh off your son's basketball practice. You and your family have been integrated very quickly into the Rockingham, Spotswood community, Harrisonburg community, which has been great to see. So, Coach, 4-game winning streak, lots of good energy around this program as we head towards a big game on Wednesday. Just kind of your initial thoughts on where the program now stands through the first 23 games.
Yeah, well, hey, man, first of all, thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure to get on here with you guys. And so I like where we're at right now, obviously, with our guys, starting to peak and, kind of find their stride and playing well together. And it's taken some time, with this team. And obviously, as we talked about early in the non-conference, and we put together a tough non-conference schedule so that we could really challenge ourselves and learn about our group. And, I've always said that it's a part of the process of becoming a good team that you got to go through some of those losses, those tough games, to really learn about your team and bring them together. And that's kind of, the byproduct of where we're at right now. And I really like where our guys are. And I think we're growing in our maturity and our toughness, and finding new ways to win games. And that's extremely important as you get in the back half of conference play, with any league in the country, because you're playing teams for the second time. Everyone knows, the players inside out, the tendencies, the play calls, all these different things. And so you've got to be very specific and strategic as to how you win a game on Thursday night, and then how you turn around and do it again on Saturday in a very different manner. And I think our guys are picking up on that and gaining confidence as they go, each week with it.
You mentioned, putting together a great out-of-conference schedule, and a lot of the teams that we played early on, and some of them that we have beaten, you're seeing them pop up in some of the, projection brackets for NCAA. Before we talk about kind of where we are now and looking forward to the rest of the season, I'd love to kind of hear some of your just looking back on what it was like to have to really come in and put an entire team together with just a couple guys returning, as well as putting together that schedule. Just what was that like? Because I imagine it's a lot different right now than really when you started your coaching career. And I think the fans would be interested to kind of get that perspective of what that was like for you.
Yeah, without question. It is. It's very different nowadays. And that's why you're seeing just so much turnover, right, in the coaching ranks. And I think that's probably a reason that you're seeing a lot of the, traditional coaches that have been in it for a long time. It is just such a drastic change now. But for us coming in last year, it was a even more unique situation, right? I think you saw quite a few programs that have had success. People move on, and then you inherit kind of an empty locker room, and that's not, we weren't the only team that had to kind of rebuild that this season. But what made it very unique with our situation was we inherited a blank schedule, right? And that was just kind of the way it worked out. It wasn't anybody's fault. Very unique in that way. So we had, kind of double duty to do, and both of those things kind of go hand in hand with one another, right? Because we couldn't get anybody to schedule a game with us until we finished our roster, right? And I think a lot of people had the understanding that, hey, we're probably going to put together a good team, and given where we had came from and how we play, and then also coming here to JMU with just the track record and the brand nationally that we have, and the momentum that our university and basketball program have. And so the roster had to come first, and then once the roster came, I think the schedule came after that. But you're exactly right. A lot of those teams that we played in the non-conference are sitting at the top of their standings within their respective leagues right now. We knew that was going to happen. A really interesting stat, the Sun Belt sends out updated net rankings each and every week, and I'll take a peek at those in my email. But one that analytic number that sticks out is that our average net of our opponents is in the 50s. Wow. And so, which is an incredible number, because the next nearest team in the Sun Belt to us is in like the 160 range. Wow, right. Yeah. And so, the strength of schedule, the average opponent net that we've played this year is significantly higher than anybody else's in the league. We knew that was going to be the case. But we also knew that we were going to have to, learn a lot about our team as we were going through. And sometimes we'd have to learn some of those with some losses. But it's got us to this point to where we're at right now. And we've kind of accomplished our goal of, learning about our team and getting better and playing our best basketball once you get close to March.
Well, and so that's a great segue into this next part, because as we look through the season, obviously there were some games early on that I know from the post-game comments from you and the players would love to have back, because you knew you were a better team than the team that was on the floor that night. But, fans, coaches, we all love to see trends. And what started off as a win-loss, then there was a 2-game streak, then there was a 3-game streak, and now we're on a 4-game streak. So clearly, what I would, maybe from a fan's perspective, you had a bunch of individuals coming from all over the country, from different teams, different programs. And, we even see this in the Olympics when you put the dream team together of some of the best players in the country, but, they're not as much of a cohesive unit as maybe some of these countries that are all they do is play as that team. And so you've clearly seen a ton of improvement. You've clearly seen the team start to play more team ball, and that's been reflective in how they've been playing lately. From your perspective as a coach, just talk about that trend that we're all seeing and kind of where we're at right now as a team.
Yeah, basketball is such a chemistry-driven game, right? It's all about how the pieces fit well together and complement and ultimately elevate each other, and it does take time. And for our group, we've got so many guys that are in different roles than they've been at their previous spots. We've got a lot of guys that have never experienced winning. That now that's the expectations. We've got guys that they're not used to being the biggest game on everybody else's schedule, or maybe they had a good role on a team, or they did experience winning, but we're asking them to contribute a lot more, not just statistically, but with their leadership and their consistency. And so those things, they take time for our guys. But I certainly like where we are. You look back to where we did have that pattern of win a game, lose a game, win a game, lose a game. And I think a lot of that was, we'd come in after a win and we'd show the guys, hey, these are the mistakes we made in this game. They weren't enough to beat us, but moving forward, as we continue to play tougher competition, it will be. And sometimes, guys that are coming off a win and feeling good about themselves, that haven't been through those wars and been through those situations, it takes some time. It takes some lumps to be able to understand that. And then, generating energy for each other. We talked about that a ton, right? I thought that was the biggest reason that we'd struggled on the road, because, we're going into hostile environments to where it's the biggest crowd that, whether you're at Towson, you're at Norfolk State, or all these places, the best crowd they had all year. And so if we're going to, be able to come out of there with a win, we've got to have this unbelievable energy for one another. And it can't just be when we see the ball go in the hole. And so those are things that we've learned and we've gotten better with. It's put us in this position to where we are right now. And again, momentum is such a important thing, right? You never know how to generate it. You never know how long you're going to have it. So you've just got to make sure that you really stay in the moment, day to day, focus on learning from each game, and facing the mistakes that you made, right? And saying, hey, let's get better with these, and let's, try to just continue to march forward and not worry about win streaks or standings and things like that. But it's kind of where our team is, at the moment. But I'm really pleased because we've got different guys stepping up each and every day.
Yep.
And I think that's what our staff has kind of learned about this team is it's not as much about, hey, one guy being completely consistent, through 20 some games. It's going to be kind of by committee. So you'll have one game where one guy's really locked in and it's a great game for him, and another guy maybe it's not. But I think the guys are really buying into that and selling out to winning right now, which is important.
Hey, Coach, obviously it's a growing process for your players, but it's also a growing process for you and your coaching staff coming from the Ohio Valley. What have you learned about the Sun Belt in terms of this conference that has been something you've had to navigate through as you've gone through this first 23 games that now that you're more into conference schedule is helping you as you plan for the back half of what's to come, as well as the Sun Belt tournament?
Yeah, it's a jump. It's a jump, coming from the OVC. Just the size, the athleticism, the length of the players across the board is a big difference. The physicality, right, even as to how the games are officiated because of just the athleticism that is in the league. And so a lot of great coaches. I think the another thing about this league is in the coaching ranks, these are all good jobs, right? And you can see any of these jobs or these programs and teams flip in a heartbeat, right? You could have a team like South Alabama that, in the preseason was picked very low And then obviously they're up at the top of the league right now. And that can happen with any team in the league, just with, how much, notoriety the Sun Belt has, how much the fan bases care about each of these programs and want this to be a great basketball league and how they're all resourced. But it's a challenge, right? The travel, we're pretty fortunate. I feel like our schedule was not too bad in terms of travel to wear our guys down. We've got some resources here at JMU that really provide us a competitive advantage to not get, exhausted on the road and be able to, make sure that we're ready to play on those Thursdays and Saturdays. But there's a lot of things that are an adjustment, but a lot of credit to the coaches as well, because you're seeing, a team that can turn around and beat somebody by 20 on one night and then lose the next. But that's a credit to just how good the coaching is in this league and the adjustments that guys are making, as the conference season goes on.
You mentioned the environment that our team is facing on the road, and they're facing one of the best crowds that those schools are bringing in. I want to talk a little bit about some of your post-game comments in a few games about complimenting just the JMU crowd and the JMU atmosphere. I know after the Arkansas State game, we didn't even have students in town, but I think we were 5,000 or 6,000 strong there, and that crowd really helped push the team over the finish line. And then obviously your comments yesterday, this is the first really – these last two games, the first two games, we've really had the students back in session. I know that makes a big difference, but I just want to say as a fan, I always appreciate how much love you show for the fans and the atmosphere, and just kind of talk about what that means to you and your guys and why it's so important for people to come out to these remaining games.
Well, it's unbelievably important. Just to have a home court advantage, in college basketball, it goes a long way, because obviously winning on the road is extremely difficult to do. And so you do want to take care of business at home. You want to protect home court. And, the tougher the atmosphere when you're at home for the opponents, the better it is for us. That's just the way that it is. And, there's a lot of things that people could be doing on Saturdays or Thursday nights. And we appreciate the fact that, hey, they're that invested in our program. They want to come out. They want to, be a part of the success. They want to go through the journey with this team. And it's an unbelievable environment. I tell you, if you're coming to really enjoy not just how hard our guys are playing, how much fun they have, but just being at the games, right? Our administration does an unbelievable job with the promotions and the game day atmosphere, but it goes such a long way. I know that our guys, the moment they walk into that building and they know it's game day, they have a level of confidence that is certainly due to those fans that are going to be in there. And when they hit shots, they get rebounds. Our fans are like unbelievably educated, right? I've been to some places to where, there's fair weather fans and they see a three or a dunk and they're going to go crazy. Our fans go crazy when you get a deflection, right? You're running in and diving for a loose ball, or you're talking on defense. I had a fan go crazy the other day because the guy had a great closeout. Like, it didn't even end up on a stat sheet. They closed out, they plant push show, stayed in front of somebody, and they were like, yeah, let's go. And I'm like, these people really know it, right? And they love it. And that matters. And our guys feed off of it. And it just, it brings out the best. It brings out the best in our players. It brings out the best in our coaches. And it makes for a fun environment. And so we appreciate more than they could ever imagine coming out and supporting our team.
I think, Coach, I was going to ask you just in general, now that we look towards Wednesday, one thing about the Sun Belt this year is that you now have seeding matters in ways that are maybe the average fan may not understand. Can you touch on that, about why a top 4 seed in the Sun Belt is so important, and then why Wednesday's game specifically against Troy is so an important piece to that puzzle as we try to continue to climb up the standings in the Sun Belt?
Yeah, so it's a unique tournament setup, right? The tournament's going to run all the way from Tuesday to Monday, so it's a week-long event. Every team makes it in the Sun Belt, which is exciting, and I think that's how it should be. But I also think you want to reward the teams that perform, throughout the 2-month conference season. And so, if you can finish in the top 2, you're going to get a double bye all the way to the semifinals, right? Or I guess that'd be like I don't even know how many buys that would be that would get you there, but you got to win 2 games, right, to go to the big dance if you finish as the 1 or 2 seed. But you only have to win 3 games if you finish at the 3 or the 4. And so, those are really important keys once you get to March. Otherwise, you're going to have to win 4, 5, 6 games, in order to punch your ticket to March Madness. And so sheer numbers, right? You want to give yourself the best chance to be able to do that. And you'd like for that opponent to be a little bit more worn down before they get the opportunity to play you. And that's how it should be, right? You should be able to reward the 2 and 3, 4 best teams that take care of business throughout January and February. And that's certainly what we're fighting for right now, and something that we're fighting for against a really good Troy team. And this will be the only chance, that we get to play them. There's tons of tiebreaker scenarios. We don't have a completely balanced schedule with it being 14 teams. From a scheduling model, we have an East and a West. And so we'll play, each of the teams on the East side twice, and then we'll play 6 out of the 7 teams. So there's one team every year that we're not going to play. This year that happens to be Louisiana. And so, of the 6 games that we get to play against the West side, 3 at home, 3 on the road, we certainly need to, try to take care of business with those as best we can. And this is a big one here. As we've obviously, took care of business with Arkansas State, and with Southern Miss, we let one, get away from us with South Alabama. So this is the next step for us to be able to take care of business on that side of the bracket, or that side of the schedule. And we need to make sure we do it.
Well, Coach, last couple of questions. I did want to make a question for you with JMU women's basketball having so much success, obviously undefeated in the Sun Belt. I had a chance to be in the building a little bit in the preseason, see how you interact with Sean. What's the energy like just in the building as that program continues to just make an unbelievable run and continue to be a team in the mid-majors that is always on the national forefront of programs that people look out for? It's got to be a pretty fun building to come in the morning.
No, it's awesome. It's so awesome. And I'm so thankful, being a first-year head coach here, to have a guy like Sean who's built his program. He's been here for so long, and he's just such a great dude. I mean, he's just such an awesome person. And he and his family, his wife and my wife connected, and those things go a long way when you uproot your family and you move to a new place and take over a program. And for a guy that's doing it, as good as it can be done right across the hall from me, and he shares all that stuff with me, and he wants us to have success just like we want them to have success. So that's been an incredible resource, and it just makes for a really positive environment in the arena every day, because we're pulling for each other. We text every day. I was really kind of, thankful that their games got pushed back to Friday, Sunday last week, because our family, I got a chance to go for the first time this year outside of the Texas game. And so I'm up in the stands, getting everybody up and going. And I loved every second of it, because it's not every day that I get to go to the AUVC as a fan. So it was fun to be able to do that. But man, they are absolutely rolling. They have such a fun team to watch. And of course, we get to see the ladies every day, in the training room and the weight room and stuff, in the hallways. We pass them, and their practice times are going to be pretty similar to ours. So I'll poke my head in the film room when they're getting ready to meet before Sean gets there, and tell them how good I think they are, how tough they are. I'm sure Sean's like, stop telling them that, we got to keep them hungry, but they are. They're so much fun to watch, and they're the gold standard, in this league. And Sean does an unbelievable job, he and his staff.
Well, in the podcast game, you mentioned 2 words that are perfect segues. You mentioned your wife and you mentioned family, which is how we're going to wrap up this segment with you. One thing you mentioned in your initial press conferences is that you had an amazing partner in your wife, Misty, and we figured that meant a lot of different things. But one thing I don't even know if you knew was how much of an amazing partner Misty is when it comes to amping not only you up, but amping up all of JMU athletics on social media. I don't have the statistics, so this is going to be a completely made up statistic, but I think it's definitely accurate. I think Misty comments first with a purple and gold heart on maybe every JMU social post imaginable. So I asked you, if at all possible, if you could have Misty come on just so we could personally say thank you. But she has embraced Harrisonburg in a way that has just been so incredible to see. Hey, Misty. I just Misty, I don't know if you can hear us or not, because I think he has AirPods on, but we just wanted to say thank you. And just Preston, give your wife a shout out for just how incredible she is and how amazing it's been to see her embrace Harrisonburg the way Harrisonburg's embraced her.
Well, she can't hear you, and so I'll let her speak too. But no, she's unbelievable. I'm not the biggest, social media guy, but she does a great job taking care of all of that stuff. But she is all in. People always say, "Hey, what does your wife do?" I said, well, "She's a coach's wife. I mean, that's her job. That's her purpose, and she really lives that out." and she is all in, man. She is all in with JMU, and from the moment we decided to come here, and so really thankful to have her, pushing alongside.
So, Missy, I'm going to ask you a question. Tell us something about Coach P that the fans may not know. Give us a little, maybe a fun fact, or is there a dish he cooks at home, or something maybe that that the fans might be like, "Wow, I didn't know Coach makes a mean chili or something." Give us some sort of fun fact. You take it any way you want.
I would say he's an amazing dancer. He's actually been invited to be part of the wedding, ceremony, just so that we can come to the after party, to the reception, so he can bring his dance skills to the dance floor. So
it's true. It's true. And so she actually, back in Moorhead 2 years ago, she voluntold me. She signed me up for this Dancing with the Stars fundraiser. And so I said, all right, if I'm going to do it, then I'm going to win. And so I trained for 2 months, and I won this competition. So if you come to my office, you'll see this little disco ball where I won this competition for dancing. So there you go.
I will say, I do believe there is a charitable Harrisonburg Dancing with the Stars.
Okay.
I believe they still, John, am I correct on that?
Yeah, I have heard that, but I'm also saying if Scooter Renkin or Cliff Wood is listening to this, I think we have our next Montpelier Collective fundraiser. So
there you go. Yeah. Don't ask him, ask me though.
Okay, we got you.
That's true.
Missy, I guess I'll just end with you. What's your message then to fans? If you were going to be crafting a tweet for Coach or an Instagram post, what would your message be to fans in Harrisonburg about why Wednesday is so important?
Just like Coach said, just the atmosphere that the fans bring. I think they probably feel like I do. We can will them to win in some instances. We can get a call here or there, with our passion and staying on the refs a little bit. So yeah. I think just having that, support in AUBC is just goes a long way.
Well, guys, I know we say it in a joking way, we say it in a serious way now. The way you have come into Harrisonburg, the way you have embraced not just the basketball program, but everything else about the university, everything else about the community is the way it's supposed to be. But it's also what's special, I think, about JMU. But it doesn't always work this well. And the fact that you guys have been this seamless in your transition, your engagement with the Roans, so many of the fans. I know, Misty, from posts you've posted on Instagram and things, it seems like you've developed a pretty cool social group as well. And it just makes all of us happy because this is there's so much wins and losses are they're important, but this stuff is what really matters, and just so welcoming for your entire family. And it's been great to see, and we're excited for what comes next for the Spradlin clan as you continue to win games on the court, but more importantly, continue to find your niche and your engagement in the Harrisonburg community. It's awesome to see.
Absolutely. We appreciate you guys.
All right. Well, Coach, we'll let you get back to your Sunday. All the best to your family, and we'll be cheering you on Wednesday night and for the remainder of the season as we head towards the tournament at the end of March.
Sounds great, guys. Appreciate you as always, and go Dukes.
All right, go Dukes. We'll look forward to the purple and gold. We'll post a recap in a few minutes, Misty, after the show. So you got to make sure your first comment.
I will.
All right, thanks again, guys. All right, and with that, man, that was awesome. They're fun. Awesome. All right, we'll bring Michael into the show. Man, that's cool. It's like Chesney's, the Spradlins, everyone who's come in this year. Kudos to everyone who made the hire, because it's clear that they took a comprehensive approach of looking at who all of them were as people, and you could see why they're thriving in their roles. Michael did want to transition, though, to our news and notes section looking at football. I know probably when we were talking about basketball, I have no doubt that you were making some notes on this football roster. 19 signings from a transfer perspective, really bolstering this lineup as we move through winter workouts and now as we head towards the spring. Obviously, the headline of those 19 is the 2 quarterback signings. Matt Sluka coming from UNLV, previous stops at Holy Cross, where he's very familiar, obviously, with Coach Chesney and Coach Kennedy. And then we bring in Camden Coleman from the University of Richmond, who played football about 1.1 miles from where I am sitting right now. Just your initial thoughts on this quarterback grouping now that still will include Alonzo Barnett as he rehabs from some sort of injury. We haven't gotten specifics on exactly what his status are. JC Evans, as well as Billy Atkins, who is still on the spring roster. This is a quarterback room that is loaded with a lot of variety in terms of the skill set, but also with some great experience now that should help fans be very confident that whoever our coaching staff turns to, they have some options that have a tremendous amount of history in terms of winning games on the field.
Yeah, John, I was going to say, what else has to be said? I think you covered majority of it right there.
There you go. End the show.
Just on the lead up. No, that's awesome. But before I talk about this, going back to Coach P and Coach Chesney, all these hires were made without an AD, without a president. I think it just speaks tremendously, right, to James Madison, the department as a whole, the commitment to winning, all of that good stuff. It's phenomenal to see where we are and kind of what the craziness was almost a year ago. Going back to the fun stuff, quarterback room. I think we've been a spoiled fan base since the Vadleys, the Brian Shores, the Cole Johnsons, the Todd Centeos. But I don't think we've ever had a quarterback room where we have a bowl game MVP. We have a quarterback that started our first bowl game and won it. We had a quarterback that had 26 touchdowns and 4 interceptions and threw for over 2,500 yards in one season. And then we bring on 2 quarterbacks that I believe are combined 41-10 win-loss ever. So obviously we're FBS now. We're probably shooting a little higher than we had in the past, but like, talk about a wealth of riches in arguably the most important position. And I think, we look back at AB3, you mentioned, Alonzo Barnett, you mentioned his injury, wishing him the best. I think at the end of the day, he was a warrior last year for the program, putting together so many different pieces, connecting with a wide receiver room and an O-line room where everyone had to step up following last season. But I think Coach Chesney and we have to do what's right for the program. And depending on what condition he's in going into the fall, which I hope is 100% he's ready to rock and roll, I think we would be doing the program a disservice without bringing in more proven depth. Yep. And you bring in a Sluka, which you do a quick Google search, everyone knows what he's all about. I think he had over 25 rushing touchdowns. He was a 2-time first-team All-American at FCS level. He was a Walter Payton Award finalist, you name it, decorated quarterback. Camden Coleman, probably the purest passer on the roster now. Just all things included, he was 13-1 for the Ticks, I think, in 2 years. Like, just the wealth of riches, and I'm really curious what the competition is going to be like going into the spring.
Well, and to mention one other thing about Camden Coleman, as we go back to the 19 signings, 2 of those signings also happened to be his wide receivers from the University of Richmond, who also had tremendous amounts of success on the field. What are you seeing from the wide receivers we brought in that will go along with what we have returning in the wide receiver room?
I don't know if people can see this or they're watching, but we're tall now at receiver. No offense to the Cam Rosses, the Dollisons last year, they did a hell of a job, but we went from starting, I think, 3'5'8", 5'9" receivers to signing a 6'2" kid that was a stud at the Division III level in Collins, 6'3" in Ellis at the University of Richmond, another 6'1" receiver, another 6-foot receiver. We've got Dylan Williams coming back. That's 6'1". I think we had a walk-on come back, a transfer from I think the defensive 3 level or D3 level, and Chase Miller, who's 6'2" or so. I think size was the name of the game at wide receiver. And I think this is going to be an interesting dynamic, right? You mentioned it. Camden Coleman brings in his 2 top receivers in Camden Ellis and Nick DeGennaro, who I think is recovering from an injury. Both of them all conference players, 1 and 2 in their position at the program. So they've got that chemistry. And you bring in a Sluka that knows the offense, knows the coaching staff. I think it's a great bet from Coach Chesney. Which one's going to withstand or who's going to win out, right, when it comes to the spring game? Is it going to be the quarterback wide receiver chemistry, or is it going to be familiar with the coaching staff and the playbook, or is it going to be AB3's recovery? I think it's an interesting dynamic overall.
Well, and you're also bringing in something we saw in the bowl game is now the ability to potentially play multiple quarterbacks. You're obviously opening the potential for some pretty crazy 2-point conversion possibilities, as we saw with this staff last year. They were very creative in that. Is, do you have some formations where you have 2, potentially even 3 quarterbacks on the field? Could you see J.C. Evans potentially brought in the game as a tight end or an H-back? I mean, there's a lot of options for Dean Kennedy in his second season under the helm of JMU as their offensive coordinator, and exciting. And at the very least, you have to feel confident as a fan now that whoever is the starter or whatever that balance is in terms of snaps, that if somebody does suffer an injury, You've got significant experience. Billy Atkins, again, who we had on our last episode, just the leadership and almost like being another coach in that room, what he's going to be able to bring to that roster is he's shown whatever his role is, he's going to lead with class and lead with just being a great teammate. That's another thing. And then obviously the one thing I'm looking to see is how does somebody like a J.C. Evans learn and grow from a Matthew Sluka? As we saw J.C. Evans in the bowl game used in a similar fashion to what we've seen Sluka used in his previous 2 stops. So one thing I'm just excited about Sluka is, yes, there was controversy around how he left UNLV. That's not, for me personally, something that I'm focused on, because if this staff vouched for him, if the players who have talked about him say such great things about him, I'm pretty confident that they're aware of what the truth is around that story. So I think fans at the very least should keep an open mind and waiting to see what we get from Matt Sluka. But Sluka had success at UNLV in those games that he started, winning some big games. So that's something, if you're a fan, he's shown that he is not just somebody who did it at Holy Cross. He had success in those games. Yes, a lower passing percentage, something that I'm sure he's going to want to improve. But something about him just feels like he has that it factor, and that's kind of what we've seen in some of those wins. Is just an ability to really run through people and use his legs as a real weapon at multiple levels now.
I mean, he's a gamer, right? I think that's all it is, right? When you look at what he did at Holy Cross, I mean, they won, I think, 5 conference championships in a row. I think 4 of them were under his when he was the quarterback there. He finds ways to win. And when you look at the way that the roster is structured for next year, we've got Petaway coming back, Ayo Adeyi hopefully healthy. We've got offensive line that brings back experience and talent, especially with McMurtry coming back at right tackle. I mean, how much do we really want pressure on the quarterback versus just get the ball to the right athletes? I think we talked about that a lot last year, and obviously we had to get some chemistry and figure out whose role is what. But when you think about the wealth of riches right now with the running back room, handing the ball off, getting at least 4 yards of carry, if you run the RPO, sticking that out with Collins, Ellis. I didn't even mention the Sanchez kid from Villanova.
Yeah, who was like Wayne and Ymir Knight, who are going to be back next year.
Exactly. And you've got Wayne, the Knight brothers that are back, which I think they're going to have all conference years, in my opinion, at their respective positions. It's going to be, where do you pick and choose, right? If you're a defense, do you go all in on the run, and now you've got all these athletes one-on-one in space, or I have confidence that Chesney and Kennedy are going to find ways to be creative with RPOs, the pop pass game, getting folks down the field. And when you look at Sluka did at UNLV, they ran a very exotic scheme over there. But they were all about just getting mismatches all over the field. So Sluka, I'm sure they took their shots down the field. I think he's going to have an opportunity to have really easy completions in this offense. Same thing with Coleman too, right? I think he's got a lot of talent in front of him. So I think, going back to what we talked about last episode, Coach Chesney walked into year 2 with a coaching staff relatively in place. There are no fire drills. We know where the pieces are. And he was able to go out and recruit really good athletes, but guys that were all dudes in their last program. I think that's the most important part. You've got guys that were starters, had prolific statistics, were relied on by the other team to make big plays in big moments. Sure, we will talk about it here shortly. We've got some high risk, high reward additions as well. But when you look at overall, I'm really impressed with this haul going into the 2025 season.
So when you look at this group, obviously we solidified the secondary as well, picking up some corners. I know that was something you wanted to touch on. Is there an X factor or a player that you look at in this list that go, again, might have that ceiling, that maybe fans who see his name or see where he's from goes, I don't know about that one, but is there somebody on this list that you circled to say, that's somebody I'm really intrigued to see what they bring the spring ball or as they go towards the fall, when they get to camp in August?
Yeah, no doubt. I love that you brought in you mentioned the DBs. I think we brought in 4 to really solidify the back end, which I'm really excited about as well. But the one player I think that's has such a high ceiling, we've seen similar players like him before flourish at JMU. And once again, was just relied on in this last program is, I might butcher his name, I apologize, JT Kwame-Yao, linebacker from Centerville, Virginia, previously played at Shepherd University, I think the D3 level. Coach Daniels was coaching there for a little bit as well. I think started all 3 years, first team player. I think he had over 170 tackles during his time, just an absolute, run and chase type of guy, run, see ball, get ball kind of player. You think of like the Kelvin Azanamas, the Dimitri Holloways, the Brandon Herfords, that these smaller 6 foot, 210, 221 backers. I mean, I just think that like he's going to have his moment, next year for JMU and be able to shine in that space. I think one of our commenters just mentioned Landon Ellis. I think that's up there too, right? 6'3", 185, matchup on the outside. Virginia kid as well from Woodbury Forest, which I know we had a lot of folks that had some opinions about how many Virginia kids are we picking up. I think it's good to see in our hometown, but like I think JT's just got so much. He's explosive and he fits that mold, right? And like, shout out to Stephon Robertson. I went to school with him. He's just recently inducted to the Hall of Fame. Similar mode as well. Smaller, very instinctive, run and gun type of linebacker. I'm excited to see what he can do next year.
Thank you to Gary Butler for fact checking us. We do like when, I mean that in all sincerity, not sarcastically. Shepard is D2.
D2.
Thanks for fact check. We need a PTI fact checker sometimes. I did want to ask though about one other thing before we touch on another big piece of news around JMU football is our recruiting staff has been hitting the road in a big way over the last couple of weeks. Seeing coaches all across the country making inroads and promoting our program. Is there any trends you're seeing in recruiting or anything that you're noticing just as now, again, this is the second go around for this staff. And now they can also speak to what it's like as a coach to coach on the sidelines of Bridgeforth with the fan support. Lots of offers clearly going out there as we're seeing kind of a few pop up every single day on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, it's you're seeing the effects of being an FBS, right? Going into year 4, which is wow, like time flies so fast. But we're offering 4-star kids, 3-star kids, 5-star kids, like maybe not 5-star just yet, but definitely on the 4-star range. You're seeing sort of the breadth of experience this coaching staff has, right? Looking at folks in Texas, hitting the Mid-Atlantic area, which is our bread and butter as well. I also love that, we've got a handful of Virginia guys on the staff that are really hitting the state a lot harder than before. But I still think, like, going back to the advantage I think JMU has geographically, Pennsylvania and just that 81 pipeline that I kind of call it is just such a great get for us. I think we'll definitely see some really good prospects come from there as well.
Awesome. And then to either of you guys, and you want to touch on one of the other big pieces of news around JMU football is we do lose our defensive coordinator. Lyle Hemphill makes the transition to Texas A&M. So that is a vacancy now. Just seeing and anecdotally hearing that this is a position that has significant interest from coaches across the country. Michael, any initial thoughts on the position or names that are out there on social media as potential candidates? Obviously, we're not going to know the name. We're not going to speculate, but so much. But anything from a profile perspective, you're looking to see in terms of potential hire.
First off, like, shout out to Coach Hemphill. I think leading the country in turnovers. Once again, putting all these unknown pieces together while he was still trying to figure out where his office is, all so quickly. I mean, it's one hell of a job. And like how dominant JMU's defense has been the last few years, we held the benchmark super high. Yeah. And I think no surprise to him, right? He reconnects with his old head coach, Mike Elko at Texas A&M. He was the head coach at Duke. They had an opportunity for him. Like, when you do well at JMU, you will get noticed. And I think the fact that we had the opportunity to have a coach at his level, his experience, being such a good defensive coordinator across all levels of programs, I think, thank you. And we wish him all the best. But I think we've got sky's the limit for our next hire. And I think, when you look at historical, Coach Signetti, when Coach Heatherman left, I think when he went to Minnesota, right? I think that's what happened after he left us. We hired our linebacker coach, which was relatively unknown at the time. Brian Haynes, he was the linebacker coach at Elon. He was the linebacker coach at JMU. Everyone knows his name now. I wouldn't be surprised if we go internally too. Coach Zach Sparber comes from that Mike Elko, Hemphill line of defenses. Linebackers are the quarterbacks of the defense. And I imagine he would be a natural fit in that position if we feel that he has the potential step up. And we've seen it done before. So I think that's the one name. If we go internal and keep the familiarity there, I think that makes a lot of sense. But you also look at familiarity with Coach Chesney. I think the Holy Cross defensive coordinator right now, I think his name is Brian I might mess up his name, Vaganek. I think he's been at Holy Cross for 5 or 6 years. That's a name that Chesney has some familiarity with. And also the UNH defensive coordinator was the actual defensive coordinator for Coach Chesney, I think, for 5 of his 7 years at Holy Cross. So you look at familiarity at the end of the day, which I think is probably what he's going to go for, because you don't want to, if it's not broke, don't fix it at this point.
Yeah. Well,
I'll just add to it that, if Coach Chesney can replace 90% or not, was it 96% of our production from last year and hire an entire coaching staff, go 9-4, be in contention for a Sun Belt championship, win a bowl game, part of me is like, just hiring a DC and, and bringing back,
exactly.
And all things really are relative in life.
I just have full confidence. And again, I think I've brought this up every show, but Chesney's not coming in fresh, new. He's had a year under his belt.
Not living with his assistant coaches.
Yeah. And again, it's not an easy thing to replace a DC, and it's not an easy thing to replace a DC like Hemphill, but Chesney has won my confidence. And it's one of those things where, unlike last year where I'm maybe scouring Twitter and part of me is just like, I'll know when I know, and I'm sure it's going to be good.
Yeah. I'll just say one last football point before we get to final thoughts, though. You can hear the excitement around this roster, and it builds towards the schedule that we mentioned on our last episode. When you look at this upcoming home schedule, I know those Duke Club season ticket renewals, everything's out there now. Now's the time. Book your plans, get your hotels reserved, make sure you got your tickets, because with this roster and the excitement around what's going to be coming to Harrisonburg this season, this is not a time to be delaying your purchases, because I think it's going to be a hot ticket. And this is the time, as always, to support the Duke Club, support the collective, give these coaches, staff, the roster resources they need to continue to build this, because again, there's going to be spring football. There's going to be another roster window, lots of opportunities to continue to tweak this lineup and get it ready for what we're all going to be looking at closely as we move towards August. Guys, kind of final thoughts around the horn. I did want to mention once again, just a massive kudos to JMU women's basketball. What Shauna Regan and co are doing. This program continues to push to new heights, and they're doing big things in the Sun Belt. So not only go out and support the men's team, find ways to get out to the AUBC and support the women. If they're on the road in a city that you happen to live in, if you're not in Virginia, that's a great way to also show your support for that program, is go see them on the road. And then finally, again, the more support they get at home, the better, but also turn on their stream on ESPN Plus. All those views matter as these decision makers look at putting programs on TV. When they see full program support, that helps JMU athletics across the board and is really important for the entire program. But Taylor, I'll go to you for your kind of final thoughts.
I got a lot because things are great. First, you mentioned the women's basketball team. You don't win games on paper, but if you did, they're going to likely be double-digit favorites for every game remaining on their schedule. So if things go our way, that's a 26-4 regular season as they enter into postseason, which could easily give them a shot at 30 games. Get out and see this team, because they really are. Again, it's just one more program that we came into the Sun Belt and kind of took over. So they're doing great things. Get out to the Atlantic Union Bank Center. They do have the second of the MAC Sun Belt Challenge this weekend. The men will be going to Toledo. The women will be home against Ball State. So get out there and see them. We mentioned it earlier, the Wednesday game against Troy. There's a massive bottleneck for second and third place right now in the Sun Belt. If we beat Troy, we'll be tied with them at their conference record, but we'll have the win over them. We also have the one win over first place Arkansas State. So this game Wednesday is arguably, I know Coach P is going to want to say every game is the most important game, but as a fan, I can say this is one of the biggest games and arguably the biggest game for the rest of the season. And we need people to come out to the Atlantic Union Bank Center on Wednesday, which is not the typical normal Thursday night conference game. So Wednesday, make the plans now, get out there. But as we start to wrap up basketball season, we got a slate of spring sports that are going to be starting in actually next week. Actually, some this week. And, traditionally JMU has always been strong in our spring sports. Women's lacrosse is preseason number 1 again. I was just looking up their schedule. Their first 3 games, UNC, Virginia Tech, UConn. It's a gauntlet. But if you remember last year, they pulled off some big wins against those teams. Baseball, once again, Florida State, number 9 in the country. They're going to start their season off on February 14th. And then we have softball. Softball also starting off in a gauntlet, starting off in one of those tournaments. I think they have NC State, they have Georgia, they have UCF. So, again, I actually had a chance to see Kurt Dudley after the game yesterday, and he and I were kind of talking about, the JMU that students know today and the JMU that my kids know is just, well, it's normal that we're receiving votes in football and that basketball is drawing 7,000 person crowds in this state-of-the-art venue. And, all these spring sports, we're playing Florida State and Georgia and UCF, you got to take a chance to kind of stop and just recognize that what has become the norm for JMU athletics is something 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, people said, I believe it can happen one day, but man, it still seems so far off. So kudos to, everyone that has gotten us to this point. Kurt Dudley is one of them that's been just a long time pillar of that athletic program, but Jeff Bourne, Charlie King, President Rose, President Alger, Jeff Polglace, there's too many people to name, and I don't want to leave people out, but we're in a very special place right now. So get out there and support basketball and start tuning into these spring sports, because it's going to be a fun way to wrap up another great athletic season at JMU.
Boom. Love it. Michael.
I was going to say, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the line of scrimmage when I talked about recruiting, because everyone knows what I love. It all starts up front.
Steve's happy now that you mentioned the lines. So
there you go. I had to do it for Steve, but we all know the depth of the O-line. We bring in 2 behemoths, 6'5", 330-pound tackles, and we brought in a hell of a lot of talent too on the line of scrimmage for on the defensive line as well. So I had to bring that up. Steve would be upset if I didn't mention that. So I'm gonna end there. I'm also end with this one thing too. I think Taylor kind of hit on the head, seeing women's basketball doing well. Men's basketball sort of turned the page here, but damn, it feels good to beat Old Dominion. I'm just gonna say it out there.
Man.
The Royal damn rivalry. I know Taylor hates it because he's got a little Monarch in him back in the day, but it always feels good. I think I saw a stat ever since we've joined the Sun Belt. I think men's basketball is 5-0 against Old Dominion, or is it women's? I saw the stat. Maybe someone could fact check here. But either way, it feels
Gary Butler. I know Gary Butler's watching. He can fact check in real time.
Yeah, someone's going to chime in and fact check me there, but it always feels good to beat them after, losing to them twice when I was in school, which still hurts to this day, but I think we've recovered. So I'll leave it
they listed out the women's basketball 11-game win streak over ODU, men's basketball with a 9-game winning streak, and now football with a 3-game winning streak. So
yeah, since entering the Sun Belt, men's basketball, women's basketball, and football have not lost to Old Dominion.
There you go. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
We're going to hire Gary. Gary, you may not know it. You're now the official fact checker. Jamie said it. That does mean you have to show up every Sunday, though. So,
and I got to give a big shout out to Gary because his tickets are right behind me. And since he was with the alumni group, he gave his tickets to some friends of ours. They are alumni, but a lot of JMU alumni have not been to a basketball game since they graduated. They came back, they brought their daughter, they went to the Outpost, they bought sweatshirts. They're sold, they're in. So thank you, Gary, for making some lifelong JMU fans yesterday.
Taylor, we have to get that tweet out, whatever the stats, 11-0, 7-0, whatever it is. We need to get it out in the atmosphere for the recruits, everyone in Virginia to know where we stand in this so-called rivalry.
Tag at ODU basketball, tag at ODU football, tag at ODU.
I love that. I'm sure they'll love that. My final said, what ride do we think is Steve Brown's favorite ride at Disney World? That's my. I don't know why I'm thinking about. Is he? It's a Small World guy. Is he a Pirates of the Caribbean?
Is he an Epcot? Kind of like
I like Epcot. I like to drink my way around.
Exactly. Maybe.
Steve has a loud bark, but he has an affinity for the softer side. I could see a Small World. I could see him just loving it up on there.
Somewhere in the world of sports books, you can bet on that. What is the first ride that the Brown cuts? I don't understand enough betting. It's like what, plus 150 or something. Steve goes on It's a small world first. Well, Steve, enjoy your vacation, safe travels. My final thought is, as always, just to thank you. Obviously, our off football schedule for shows this year is a little different than our typical weekly broadcast. That is because some of us are really busy. I'm doing the dance dad thing. Taylor's got, what sports are your kids playing now, Taylor? Is it soccer, basketball, all the sports you love? I know you love soccer.
Love
so
soccer.
I know that's
Love
your.
it.
You're just a big soccer guy, and Michael's planning a little thing called the wedding. So, but we're just grateful that you keep popping in when we do these shows. We've got a lot more exciting content coming up for you in the weeks to come, and we can't do it without your support, and we can't do it without our guests. So, thank you as always to everyone who agrees to be on the show. Misty Spradlin, Preston Spradlin. Tonight we could not have made this episode without your contributions and your time. So, thank you, and as always to our sponsors, Montpelier Collective, Where's Woody, Talent Core, Purple Nation, and Shoker Enterprises. You make the show what it is. And as always, on behalf of the gentleman on this screen, as well as Chandler Fortune, who I'm looking at right now, thank you for your time as well. And everyone, we'll be back in a few weeks with another episode of JMU Sound Off. Hope to see you Wednesday at the AUBC as the Dukes take on Troy. And with that, good night, everyone. Talk to you soon.